Okay, we're good up here.
Okay.
Okay. Have a seat. Do we need the headphones on?
Nope.
Okay.
Just as long as
All
you
right.
make sure you're close enough to the
Okay,
mic.
okay. I'll take care of that. Thank you, guys. Ready?
Yes.
You're listening to Blonde and Dangerous on Progressive Talk, AM 1450 KPTR. Our guest this Saturday afternoon is author Eric Meeks, and I'm Katie Markin. Hi, Eric.
Hi, Katie. Thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, sure, of course. I love having you on. I think last time I had you on was probably about 5 months or so ago, and I like having you talk about your book and also about the real estate market in general because they're kind of intertwined, your book and the real estate market. So first of all, why don't you start and tell me this latest book that you have, what it's about, and what you're working on right now.
Okay. This book is the best guide ever to Palm Springs celebrity homes. And it's been out for roughly a year right now. And I'll tell you, since I wrote it, it has inched its way further and further into my life in ways I didn't even imagine. It, with all humility and due respect that I can give, it is the most complete guide ever printed to celebrity homes in Palm Springs. There's pictures of the celebrities and of the homes themselves and some details about the homes. And really just enough information so that you get the gist of who Elizabeth Taylor was married to at the time and why she was there, and then you move on to the next one.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it's been a really
easy
fun
reading. It really is.
Thank you. It's I've gotten a lot of feedback that way, and it's been nice to see. Yeah.
So last time I spoke to you, you were going to expand the book, or you were going to do something more with it?
Well,
because so many people had contacted you after looking at the book.
I still get leads on new addresses and things that I have to research. My latest one is, believe it or not, a mobile home that they claim was owned by Lucy and Desi Arnaz here in Palm Springs.
Wow.
And I don't know, there's been some Lucy and Desi stories that I've already debunked, and some of that is here in the book. But, you know, it could be true, too.
Maybe it's the one from that episode. Did you see that?
The movie, The Long, Long Trailer.
Yes, exactly.
Yes. I thought that, you know, I watched just enough of that film the other day on the internet. I don't think it's the same one. But it is the right age of a trailer to have been from that time.
Maybe they were inspired after The Long, Long Trailer and went out and bought a mobile home or whatever. What is it, a mobile home?
It's a mobile home. It's, you know, it's been modified over the decades so that there's a lot of solid walls, you know, built around it these days, but you can see the original mobile home underneath the existing add-ons.
I know that a lot of people did first buy something temporary like that and then ended up buying a bigger property. I just found out after I talked to you, I decided to research my property.
Mm-hmm.
And I found out that the original owner who owned it right before my grandfather was the manager of the Philadelphia, what's the baseball team?
Not the Eagles,
No.
Philadelphia...
Phillies.
Phillies, okay. Thank you. Yes.
Thanks, Steve.
Yeah.
So he was a manager for years, and then he came out and managed one of the teams in LA, I guess. But, so that's my little claim to fame on my property.
That's real, though. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
That's a nice one, and it should definitely be brought up if you ever want to sell it or anything.
Yeah, right. Maybe
Yeah.
I could sell it to a Philadelphia
All they have to be is
fan.
a sports fan. If
Okay.
they're a sports fan, they will like being able to tell their friends that.
Right.
Yes.
And so, do you think that the people who contact you, do you have any stories of how it helped them sell their property or anything like that? I guess it's only been a year.
Not yet, but I'll tell you, that's the new cross promotion I'm trying to do for myself. As you mentioned, you know, I am in real estate, and I'm looking for ways these days I can cross promote both my knowledge of celebrity history and real estate, and that's a website that is nearly done. I'd like to say less than a month, but I've been saying that for about 2 months now. But it is very complete right now, and it's called pscelebrityhomes.com. And it's basically the information in the book applied to a website, so you can look and see who lived where, at least as far as the information I had as far as this book. I do have about 200 new leads that I have gathered, but I am not applying those yet to the website. At some point in the next couple of years, I'll do an update to both the book and the website when I've had time to fully research all this.
You're listening to Blonde and Dangerous on Progressive Talk, AM 1450 KPTR. Our guest this Saturday afternoon is author Eric G. Meeks. And I'm Katie Markin. What's a G stand for?
It's Glenn. It's a
Oh, okay.
family name, you could say. It was my grandfather's name.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good.
Yes.
Are you originally from Palm Springs? I can't remember if I asked you that.
We moved here when I was about 12.
You had a bookstore? That's right. You had a bookstore. Okay, now
Yeah.
I remember the story. You had some celebrities come through there quite often.
A lot. My family has been here since the mid-70s. We moved here in 1976, and my father and I were partners in a bookstore that would primarily use books, a little bit of new, but we did a really great job of getting celebrities in to do book signings, and had a fantastic autographed book section.
Don't you have some, was it Marlon Brando or some celebrity used to come and use your money service that you had there, your MoneyGrams?
Tony Curtis was probably the most notable that we did. Now that was my parents' first bookstore in Rancho Mirage in the Rancho Las Palmas Shopping Center, and when the mall opened up in Palm Desert in the early 80s, my parents started looking for other ways to help the bookstore to stay afloat, and so my dad opened up a Western Union in the store. And without even realizing it, he quickly became the closest Western Union to the Betty Ford Center. So, and before the internet, if you wanted to send money or a personal message, you used the Western Union. So we had a lot of people come in and out of my parents' store, and that knowledge that my dad saved from that time is part of what into the book these days.
Oh, right, because you had addresses and that type of thing.
Right.
Well, you are just an entrepreneur.
Well, that's very kind of you. I'm just a hard-working guy.
Well, you need to with all those children. I ran into you at school. Yes, school clothes shopping, and you had a big crew with you.
I had half my crew. There were 3 of the 7 there. Yes.
And
you have more than I. I mean, you mentioned on an email.
Not personally. I'm one of the children. I have 10 brothers and sisters, and so I can understand why you want to sort of expand your horizons, if you will.
I need to work. I'll tell you, my days start about 4 in the morning most days, and I work up until, I don't know, sometime close to dinner time. And I have to, because the book writing is kind of a hobby that has become something in the last couple of years. The real estate is my main bread and butter, and that's how we put.
And let's talk about that for a little bit, because I think it's so interesting. I mean, real estate actually changes just from month to month, even because of interest rates and how much inventory is on the market and all type of things. What's the current? How have things changed since the last time I had you on the show? It's about 5 months ago.
It's continuing to heat up. Prices are continuing to climb. Inventory is ever harder to find. Especially if you're in the 350 and under market, and I'm talking valley-wide in that. If you're looking for, single-family homes in the $200,000 range, you generally these days are having to go more and more out to North India or to Desert Hot Springs. A little bit of pickings through the valley, but don't expect it to be in immaculate shape. And Palm Springs, I'll tell you, is its own niche unto itself. The mid-century market here in Palm Springs on the Alexander Homes and the Easter Williams and the other these days designer architects, that market is already at or beyond pre-market recession downturn.
Who's buying? Are they cash buyers? Are they Canadians? Are they people from LA? Or is it just everyone? Or is there a trend of who's buying?
Yes, and yes. Although I think it's easiest in Palm Springs, if I can say this without being offensive, but the gay market here in town is a very strong force. If they can be identified as a community, and those guys and ladies that are part of that sector, they're very talented and trendy, and they can take a fixer-upper and make it look beautiful again, and they've done that now for the last 10, 15 years or so, but it is continuing to drive the market in Palm Springs, and I would think that sect of our community has really propelled the market and are continuing to do so. I'll tell you, I think what's going on with the mall downtown Palm Springs right now is going to launch us to an even new plateau, beyond where we're at now. I think Palm Springs is really headed in the right direction these days.
Do you find that these are second homes that people are buying? Are they flipping them? What are they doing?
Some flipping, although that's getting harder and harder because the inventory is less and less. There are still people doing that though. In Palm Springs, I think there's enough to say that there's a strong first home market. Okay, there's enough people doing that with the secondary home, and this is just my opinion. I don't have any data to really base this on.
This is your experience as a real estate agent.
Yeah, people I've interacted with, the feeling it. In Palm Springs, I think there's still a lot of first home buyers, and then secondly would be second home buyers. In the rest of the valley, a lot of investors, okay, that are buying it, because as you move away from Palm Springs, you don't have the mid-century market as much, although there are a few places, especially in Rancho Mirage around Tamarisk, in Thunderbird, and in Palm Desert around Sandpiper community as you go into South Palm Desert. Those areas hit the mid-century modern. There's some pockets of it. Sandpiper in Palm Desert is a fantastic one that was built by William Creasel. But the second home market more so down there. And also there's more condos down there, which the people who are buying it as a second home or a vacation home like that, because they don't have to do any yard work, they don't have to maintain the pool, whereas in Palm Springs you generally have to do those things.
Right, you don't have to worry about a sprinkler breaking or something like that.
You've got an HOA that handles everything on site except what's within your walls.
What about the market in Indio? You mentioned that, and I'm just curious. I actually know several people who, when the market dumped, bought these big, humongous homes out on the other side of the freeway, I think, in Indio, and
I helped a gentleman buy one of those back a little over a year ago. He was not the one who had lost it. At the time, it was a property that had already been foreclosed upon, and it was a 6-bedroom home, around 3,600 square feet. And I'll tell you, at the time he bought it, it only had remnants of the beauty that it had been, even though it was only about 5 years old. I helped steer him through a remodel on the house where he spent about $30,000, relatively inexpensive for a house of that size, to bring it back to, its glamour of what it can be. And now he uses it as a rental, and we're looking for more of those, but they're harder to find.
Are more people moving to the desert, or why is the market the way it is now?
Palm
that you're
Springs,
seeing,
compared to the major metropolises in the country, in my opinion, Palm Springs is still a really good value.
When you say Palm Springs, do you mean the Coachella
Yeah,
Valley?
I do. I use Palm Springs in a very general way, and thank you for clarifying that. The Coachella Valley is still a really good value. If you compare the Coachella Valley market to even the Los Angeles market, Los Angeles is off the charts. I mean, it's silly up there what people are paying for a house here, double or more of what you can buy a house here, and not even in the best neighborhoods up in the LA area. I have one friend who lives in the valley who, when he looks at prices down here, is still like, gee whiz, I can't believe how cheap these are compared to up there. It's just he's got his whole lifestyle up there and he likes the beach. But his wife is pushing, saying, hey, we should think about this. But if you look at that, apply that same scenario from Los Angeles to San Francisco, to New York, to Miami, to any major city in the country, Palm Springs is a really good value. I just had one couple from Ohio that moved out here, and actually they bought the house. They were a younger couple who was in their 40s or 50s, and their parents, the husband's parents, just moved out to the desert to stay full-time so the kids could come out and visit. So you get a little bit of both with them.
How many homes are you selling a month right now, about?
2 to 5 a month. I mean, my wife and I, including leases, because we do that, we do between 40 and 50 deals a year, and we're looking to grow beyond that. These days, I'm honestly trying to figure out, with just a little more business, we could grow to a team, and we'd be looking to hire assistants.
So the real estate market is expanding.
If you're in the real estate market right now and it's not doing enough for you, in my opinion, you're probably not putting enough effort in, or there's something you couldn't do different, because the market itself as a whole, and my wife and I's business, is very, very good.
What do you do if there's not inventory there, though?
You hunt and you peck, and you keep searching. Sometimes you have to wait, but
do you ever go on people's doors and just knock and ask them if they want to sell their house?
I have. I have not been fruitful at that, but when I've had a client who really wanted to buy something, yeah, I've gone and talked to the owner, and I've never been chased off. I've had an honest-to-goodness discussion out of it, but I've not had one of those turn into a sale yet. One of the things that you do get with more experienced agents that have been around a while, you have owners that you've dealt with in the past, and if you're doing good at keeping in contact with your previous client base, you might know who's thinking about selling. So if you get another buyer that comes in that really wants to buy and there's nothing there, that conversation that we just described goes better if you already have a warm connection.
I don't know how much time you have enough time to answer this or not, but I have a question about property tax and I guess
I'm generally against it.
Good answer. But maybe when we come back, we can talk a little bit about why it may be advantageous to, if you bought your house higher, to sell it and buy something that has a lower price point, because you'll end up paying lower property tax. If you bought something for $600,000 and you end up buying something for $300,000, how much you can save in property tax. But I don't know
It
how.
might be based on your age too, with my answer to that question. But when we get back, I'm happy to tell you what I know.
Okay, sounds good. You're listening to Blonde and Dangerous on Progressive Talk, AM 1450 KPTR. Our guest this Saturday afternoon is Eric Meeks. He's an author, and I'm Katie Markin. We'll be right back.
Alrighty. Well, thanks. That's going to go okay.
Yeah.
Remember, we're still up here.
Okay.
Our friends on
Aloha
YouTube.
and no swearing.
Yeah. Hopefully, I don't know how the sound is going to work out on this, because that does not have a great
right.
mic. But we're talking loud enough, and I'm hoping it turns out okay.
Yeah, I wonder if I gave you the tape, if you could sync the CD, if you could sync the audio.
Somebody could, but I'll tell you, that is not my
Yeah.
forte.
Right.
No.
You could do subtitles.
Yeah. One time I downloaded some sort of editing software for video on a 30-day trial, and I was successful in making about a 4-minute video on how to make a killing in the book world, where basically my wife kills me after I autograph a book.
That's funny.
But
oh, you know
I'm
what
not good
else
at
we can
that.
talk about? Because this is self-published, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can talk about how people go about self-publishing.
I can tell you what I know there.
And 1 minute.
Okay.
Okay. Stand by. You're listening to Blonde and Dangerous on Progressive Talk, AM 1450 KPTR. Our guest this Saturday afternoon is Eric Meeks. He is an author, and he's also a real estate agent, and I'm Katie Markin. Thanks for being on the program, Eric.
Thank you again, Katie.
First of all, before we went to break, we were talking about property tax. And the reason why I think it's kind of interesting, because just from my personal experience, my house, I ended up getting it, I inherited it when it was high. It was 2005, 2006.
Okay.
And so my property tax is so high compared to what the houses that are the same size as mine are selling for now. I went under Prop 8 and I got my property tax lowered down to $199,000 a year.
You did that. Yeah, I was going to say, I hope you did.
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
But since I waited till too many years had gone by, I couldn't get the whole property tax down. I could only get it down year to year. But if you buy a house at a certain price, that is your baseline. Or if you inherit it at a certain price, that is your baseline for forever, and it just goes up 2% a year. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah.
So if you have a house that you ended up getting really high, and you can actually sell it for that amount now, and then sell it and buy something at a lower price, your property tax is going to be a lot lower year to year.
It's whatever you paid for the house. So yes, if you sell high and buy low, it'll be based on the lower purchase of the home. But they can also do like what you were describing there. You can, and I don't know the time periods on it, but you can have your property reassessed. So if you had bought at a higher time and you think your home is worth less now, I would suggest that they call the county registrar or somebody and ask them, can I do that? And they can walk you through the steps to get an assessment.
Right, because over time you end up spending quite a bit of money in property tax if you ended up being one of the people who bought your house at the really high at the market. It might be worth your time just looking into seeing about selling it and buying something lower.
And depending on where they're at and when they bought, it could still be less, especially if they had bought from 2005 to 2007. Most homes in the desert are less than that still. Even though the market has come back substantially, most homes are still less. I wish that they had done it about 2 years ago. About 2 years ago, in my opinion, we were at our low. So, but it is what it is, and we are where we are. One other thing, I'm sorry, I started to answer there.
You said something
about age.
Yes.
There is a thing, and my wife knows this one better than I, is we just helped a couple who did it, where if you sell your home and you're beyond retirement age, in your next home that you buy, you can go for the lower tax on your previous home. And as an example, we just helped a couple that are in their 70s sell a home in South Palm Desert And while they sold it for about $350,000, he had bought the home back in the 1960s for about 50 or 80, somewhere in there. So for the last 50 years, he's been paying taxes on that much lower amount.
Sure.
And the new home that they bought was more than what he paid for this house in 1960, but he can still use that tax base.
That is fantastic information. I bet a lot of people don't know that.
You have to have the proper scenario to make all that math work to your advantage. But if it's there, my goodness, they should be doing it.
Sure. How do people find out about that? Is there information on the internet, or do you have to just call your real estate agent and ask?
Call my wife.
Well, go ahead, give your phone number or your webpage if you have.
My phone number is 760-567-7646. My best website, I'll tell you, it has all my information on it, is pscelebrityhomes.com. If you ever see my book, which now Barnes & Noble carries, The Best Guide Ever to Palm Springs Celebrity Homes, I have an ad for my wife and I right in the front, and I think I'm the only author in the world who puts his phone number in the book. So it's all those places you can find me easily.
So that's really wonderful and interesting news for someone who maybe has a really large home, who bought a long time ago and has been paying lower property tax, and that's been keeping them from selling a huge house and moving into something more manageable because they're worried about the property tax. I'm sure there are people who fit in that category. So if you fit under certain criteria and you're over retirement age, there may be a way to pay the lower property tax.
And I hope anybody out there who's retirement age or beyond who thinks this might fit, does try to connect with me through that direction, any of those ways that I offered. Or if you're the kid of somebody, you're getting to the point where you're starting to help your mom and dad to plan for their retirement or the next leg of their life and where they're going, that's something they should know, because the whole family can benefit. The more solvent your parents are, the less the kids will have to help them provide for them and make that transition into a deeper retirement, better for them.
Thank you for bringing that up, because that's something I was not aware of, and I think a lot of people will be interested in knowing that. You're listening to Blonde and Dangerous on Progressive Talk, AM 1450 KPTR. Our guest this Saturday afternoon is author Eric Meeks, and he's also a real estate agent, and I'm Katie Markin. And Eric, now I want to talk a little bit about self-publishing a book. You mentioned that your book is in Barnes & Noble, one of the few self-published books that's actually in Barnes & Noble. So tell me, how did you do that?
They did it on their own, and it was based on requests that they had within the store to prompt the manager to work through corporate Barnes & Noble to get it through, because Barnes & Noble, as a general rule of thumb, has a no-no, we're not going to order any self-published books. Because when you have a self-published book, and this is one of the things anybody out there who's done this knows, it has to be paid for before the book is ever printed. And so, Barnes & Noble doesn't like that. Barnes & Noble wants to pay on 30 days, 60 days, 90 days out after it sells through their cash register. But if there's a high enough demand, nobody's going to pass up a profit, not even Barnes & Noble. So basically, what made it work is just I had a book that was good enough that the demand pushed it through. I had tried in the past to submit another book that I'd written on the history of Lucille Ball in Palm Springs to Barnes & Noble, and I got a very nice rejection letter.
How many books have you written? You've written quite a few, haven't you?
I've written 10 books, and I did that basically because about 3 or 4 years ago, I came across a way to publish books for a profitable amount. In the past, and if we can go to the early 2000s, the late 1990s, I had written my first book or so in there, and I had paid to have it published and put out $2,500 up front and got one copy of the book, and it was an overpriced trade paperback, and it didn't sell. I'm an unknown author at the time, and still, I'm not much better now, but I do have one or two. But anyways, it sat on the shelves, sold a couple of hundred copies, mainly to friends and family, and that's it. 8 or 10 years go by, and then I discovered a publisher division of Amazon called Create Space. And if somebody out there has not discovered this yet and they've got a manuscript, they should go to createspace.com and check it out and do it. Now, in my life, between that first attempt at publishing where I paid a lot of money and finding CreateSpace, I had taught myself Photoshop, Microsoft Publisher, and some of the other programs that you need to know in order to create the interior of the book, make a nice cover, do all those things besides being able to write it. And these days I do it all myself. I take it from typing the first word all the way to completion. And that means that I have really no overhead, none anymore, of producing a book, except the cost of ordering that first book. And on this one here, I mean, this is a 400-page book, okay, for the celebrity homes, and I'll just be upfront. I mean, this book cost me $6.50 to publish these days.
Okay.
Now, I put a $19.95 price tag on it, but realize very few times in the sales do I get to make that $13.50 profit, because there has to be enough room for a bookseller and a distributor in the middle. So, I mean, there's a dozen mom and pop stores throughout Palm Springs that carry my book. True Value, Just Fabulous, Crystal Fantasy, the Palm Springs General Store.
Is that Just Fabulous that's in Palm Springs on the main strip there?
Yeah, right as
oh,
you come into town.
I
I think
love
it's
that
about
store. Stephen, the owner?
Stephen Monkarch.
He's
yeah.
a great guy.
He's been very generous and very kind to me on this here, and they are probably my number one. I mean, True Value Hardware and the Visitor Center, as you come into town, they both carry my book too, and those three run neck and neck, but definitely Stephen was the one who first stepped up to the place and started carrying it, and I consider them my number one.
At Just Fabulous.
And you know, a store like that, they need to be able to make at least 40%. They really like to be able to double their money. So again, going back to profit margins on this here, I had to have a way to publish it that would make it cheap enough so that I could make a little, the retailers can make a fair amount, and then the math starts working, and other people will sell your book and they'll get involved if it's a decent and demand's there, you know, and all that sort of stuff. So it was very difficult on that first one I did back in the late 90s and early 2000s because those margins didn't work.
Right. So if someone is interested in publishing their own book, you recommend that they go to the corner in Amazon called?
It's called Create Space. At the very bottom of the Amazon page, there's a whole bunch of little tiny links, and somewhere there it talks about self-publishing or Create Space or something like that. And if you'll click on that, it'll take you to the right place.
Interesting. And where do you go? Do they recommend where you go to actually get the book printed, or do you have to do that work on your own?
They do all that. They
oh,
do.
Okay.
I digitally send them a file for the interior and the exterior. As it comes out in the end, those are two separate files. I email it to them. They verify that it's all correct and it's all going to fit well and everything like that. And then I order it through them.
Do you know anything about audiobooks? For instance, if you wanted to create an audiobook along with this, or even create a book, since this is a best guide ever to Palm Springs celebrity homes, something where you use your video camera or just an audio piece of equipment and sort of did a tour yourself and described what people would be seeing at like 20 miles an hour or 30 miles an hour and sort of did an audiobook. Is that available through this site as well?
They do have audio production capabilities in there. From what I've seen, it's been a little bit since I checked it out, it was more geared towards musicians making like their own CD and that there, but you know, it's probably possible. It's just I'm not as knowledgeable in that area.
I thought you knew everything, Eric.
Almost. That's the one thing I don't. But I'll tell you, I have thought about making the video like you talked about, because these days as my business has grown from selling homes to the print forum to having my website and that there, and I mentioned this earlier, I've got about 200 videos on YouTube these days of different homes. And I think just picking a neighborhood, and if I just picked like the movie Colony or Las Palmas and only did that, I could probably design a map where in less than an hour I could hit the top 20 in that neighborhood. Okay, and it might be something that would help market my site, because these days search engines really like video input on a website to increase it in rankings.
Okay, so what you're saying is if you want to get information out there like a book or anything, if you also include a video image of it, it will pop up higher on Google, on a Google search? Is that what you're saying?
Kind of. I mean, these days on web page construction, and I'll tell you, this is not my real strength, but I have learned a little bit because I've built a few web pages in my life.
Because of your business, sure.
Search, the indexing spiders for search engines really like video content and blog content. They like a website that naturally updates itself frequently. And so those are things that, and however they do a numerical ranking, they'll give you a few pluses.
Now, when you say that you are doing video of neighborhoods, is that neighborhoods just for the book, or is that neighborhoods where you happen to be selling homes, or what are those
So far it's been
videos
primarily
for?
homes, although I tell you, there have been a couple times I just, in experimenting, because sometimes, I mean, I have to take little steps before I really figure out what's right. But if somebody went through all my videos, they'd see a few where I just basically set the video camera on my dashboard as I was driving down Palm Canyon and just, okay, today we're driving down Palm Canyon going through Palm Desert. Here on the right you've got Panera Bread. On the left you'll see the barn. You know, and I'll just talk my way through a neighborhood like that there and do it for 2 to 4 minutes.
You'd get really lucky if there was a comet or something that came by and
Yeah.
and all the news stations wanted to use it, like with the Russian comets that landed. Did you
Yeah.
see those videos about?
They were amazing.
Did
Yeah.
you? I had no idea that so many people over in Russia had cameras on their cars, because I guess they have problem with accidents and have no proof over there. Did you hear about that?
I did not know that about it. I did hear about why there were so many injuries, and it was because of the concussion of first the sonic boom of the meteorite coming in,
Mm-hmm.
and then the shock wave blowing out the windows. Because you'd hear a noise, you'd go to the window to see what it is,
Oh.
and then the window would blow in on you.
Wow, that's really. I didn't hear that before. That's interesting and scary.
It is, because
You're-
I mean, anybody's natural reaction is to go see what's going on.
Sure. Instead, they should have been under the bed.
Right.
You're listening to Blonde and Dangerous on Progressive Talk, AM 1450 KPTR. Our guest this Saturday afternoon is author Eric Meeks and real estate agent. And I'm Katie Markin. We'll be right back.
You want to move and talk a little bit about some of the celebrities I personally encountered?
Sure.
Is,
Yeah.
we could tell.
You know, every time I have you on the show, I learn so much. I mean, I love it when you're on my show. I just think I have the best information when you're on here. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I think one that I didn't tell last time was, I'm trying to remember, who was Richard Nixon's, like,
Oh,
Henry
Augie,
Kissinger, and then...
Augie, wait,
No.
the vice president, you mean? Because
No,
I saw him
Spiro
at the
Agnew.
Spiro
Yes,
Agnew.
he was the vice president, right?
Yes.
Yes,
And
okay.
I saw him at the airport with my grandfather one time.
Well, he helped my mom and dad and I through a homework assignment in college. My parents took
Really?
a college class with me one time just as
wow.
kind of a family thing to do together.
Uh-huh.
And it was nice, the answer that he
That's-
gave us on a question.
What did he give you?
Well, we were asked, well, if I tell you now, it won't be so genuine
Okay,
when we do it.
all right.
But ask
Yeah,
me
wait,
on the
okay,
show with
I
that
will.
there. And Harold Robbins was another one that was a real good friend of the family.
You're listening to Blonde and Dangerous on Progressive Talk, AM 1450 KPTR. Our guest this Saturday afternoon is author Eric Meeks, and he's also a real estate agent, and I'm Katie Markin. Thank you for being on the program.
Well, you're welcome, Katie.
It's so interesting to have you on. You have some great stories. You have great stories in this book, which is called The Best Guide Ever to Palm Springs Celebrity Homes. And you also have some personal stories that you have from experience over the years meeting celebrities, I guess. Is this just through doing the book, or is this in general?
It's basically a compilation of several points in mine and my parents' life, you know, before me and things. There's a chapter in the book called How I Know What I Know. And in that chapter I talk about my dad and I were partners in a bookstore called Celebrity Books, and it was a website too, celebritybooks.com. And we did a great job of bringing in celebrities, you know, for signings. My dad also delivered the overnight New York Times. Back in the late 80s and through the 90s, he did the home delivery, throwing the paper out of his car window. But when you do that, especially before the internet has totally caught on to what it is today, in those days, anybody who was a mover or a shaker in business or Hollywood, they got the New York Times. And so my dad had the home address of anybody around in that decade or so. And that information helped me compile this book, and then my parents owning the Western Union, as they did in the 1980s. So, I mean, I personally delivered telegrams to Ozzy Osbourne and Ronald Reagan and Tony Curtis and, you know, many of the other celebrities.
Who was
in
your
those days.
favorite celebrity who you met?
Well, Ozzy was the one that was just so typical these days of how you see him on TV.
Was he always drunk?
Well, no, because he was in Betty Ford, so he was sober
okay.
at this time, but he was at the back of the house. I knock on the front door of the home because it's one of those homes in Thunderbird Country Club, but that face onto Country Club Drive, so you don't have to go through a gate, okay, to go up to the house itself. And Sharon opens the door after I knock on it, and it's a hallway going down right from inside the door, and at the end of the hall, Ozzy sticks his head out, and in typical Ozzy fashion goes, "Hey, look out!" And Sharon yells like, "Oh, shut up, Ozzy! You know it's something for you anyways. I'll get it to you in a second." And it's just like, and that was my brief meeting of Ozzy Osbourne, and I gave her the telegram, and she thanked me, and I left. But that was probably one of the more comical ones.
So you couldn't figure out what he was saying?
Not at all.
But she understood him,
Totally.
even though it was gibberish.
And between his thick English accent and just
what
how he
he'd been
talks,
drinking the night before.
he was totally incomprehensible. But there was one celebrity I started to mention it to you earlier. I think about in the late '80s. I was going to College of the Desert at the time. Actually, mid '80s, I should say. At this time, about '85, '86, somewhere in there. My parents took a political science class with me because we always liked politics, and we got an assignment one day from the professor saying, why didn't Eisenhower support Nixon more during his first run for president? Because if he had, he might have beat Kennedy. And that's our homework assignment. Go research it. You're welcome to use any of the books in the school library. Write me an answer and bring it back in a week. So we turned in an answer to the teacher that we got through one of the celebrities that came into my parents' bookstore for the Western Union at the time. And we turned in our answer saying, Eisenhower did support Nixon to what he thought his fullest extent. It's just that Eisenhower was a general, and he's used to having his orders followed. So when he went on television and told the American public, vote for this guy, Richard Nixon is your man, he thought he was done. Unfortunately, the American public are not soldiers, and they don't follow orders as simply as that. And so we turned that answer into our teacher, and she's like, you don't give any references. Where did you get this answer from? We said, well, I had just said his name.
Spiro Agnew.
Yeah, thank you. Spiro Agnew told us.
The vice president.
He came into the bookstore
Nixon.
the other day, and we asked him, and so he's our answer.
Wow.
We got
so
an
did
A.
you get? I was gonna say, did you get an A? What was the name of Nixon's dog during that whole time?
Checkers?
Checkers.
Yeah, the Checkers speech at one point where he had some controversy over it.
Yeah. Well, I guess he had been accused of maybe taking some gifts that were kind of iffy, so he went out and did the Checkers speech.
Yeah.
And but he still didn't win. But I guess eventually he did win. When you talked to Spiro Agnew and he had come into your store, where was he living at that time?
You know, my parents dealt with him in the store that day, but somewhere in Rancho Mirage. I don't know the address on him.
I remember when he passed away. That was about 10 years ago, was it?
Roughly, I don't recall. I know I list him in the back of this, in the back of my book. There are unconfirmed addresses and celebrities I'm looking for their addresses from or on, and so there is a chapter in here where I know they lived here, I just don't know where.
So do you request actually information from readers in your book saying
Absolutely.
if you have any information? So
almost all of my new leads have come from readers who have called me up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, one that happened recently was that I got a phone call from a guy who's a big John Wayne fan, based my book, and he was looking through hoping for a John Wayne lead. And I didn't have it, and I said, look, the only thing I know about John Wayne, I've never heard about him owning a home here, but there's a great picture of him at the Historical Society showing him laying out on a chaise lounge at the El Mirador Hotel, somewhere probably in the 40s or 50s. Okay, and so he was grateful for that, but he says, you know, I'm looking for more, and he tells me there's an actor who was like a supporting actor kind of guy who played in 2 or 3 of the John Wayne movies like Green Beret or Brewster Cogburn or whatever else, you know, that stuff there for the 60s and 70s. And he said, would you call him and ask him if John Wayne, I'm like, well, I don't normally do that, but okay, give me the information, what the heck. I'll call him up, and if he doesn't hang up the phone on me, I'll tell you what I find out. And so I did, and the guy at first was a little startled, but as I told him what I was doing, he went in and he says, look, no, I knew John Wayne somewhat enough from our acting, but I do know he never owned a home here. He did come into town a few times, but owning a home, no.
So a lead that turned out to not be a home, but still interesting information.
It is. It's somebody who is a John Wayne fan might like to know that much.
Mm-hmm,
You know,
sure.
at least sometimes it's nice to know the lead doesn't go anywhere.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
What are some of the other stories that you get a lot of reaction to from readers?
You know, probably the biggest one is Munchkinville.
Yes.
I told you about Munchkinville before, didn't I?
But it doesn't really exist, I thought.
No, it doesn't. No, but it's a Palm Springs
Urban legend.
Urban legend. Thank you. Gosh, I swear I'm getting older. My mind is like leaving too many facts in my head. Yes, a Palm Springs urban legend that in the 1930s, after The Wizard of Oz, all the midgets from the movie wanted to pool their money to have some homes out here so they could be part of the whole celebrity heyday in Palm Springs. But they didn't want to be close to town where they would be looked at and oogled at or whatever too much. So they built some natural rock homes in the Araby Cove up near the top of it. And there are 3 natural rock homes that look slightly smaller than normal. And during my high school days, and I think even kids these days still
Yes.
do it, somebody's older brother or sister ends up driving the car, and hopefully they're not doing anything illegal or immoral, but sometimes that's involved, and they go up there looking for the midgets. And I know I did it as a kid, and somebody yelled, "There's one!" And suddenly, you know, we had to burn out of there real quick because we thought we were busted for just being up there driving. But yeah, I know my niece Whitney, she said she did that around the year 2000, and I have another cousin Colette who about 2005 when she graduated high school, they were still doing it, so I think it's still
But
going
there
on.
are some homes up there that are smaller, so that's sort of where the smidgen of truth
Yes.
came from the story that sort of got.
And they're made out of natural rock, and about 2 years ago or so, I had an afternoon where I didn't do anything much. I thought, I'm going to take my camera and go see if I can find these things. I mean, it was dark, and I wasn't that sober, you know, as a kid when we went up there to it, so let's go see if I can find this again. I took a picture of the home thinking, yeah, that's it. Put it on Facebook. I must have had 50 friends that all told the same story. You know, my class of '83 from Palm Springs High is still a very close class, and I probably have 400 friends on Facebook that are just from my high school days.
Wow.
And everybody that saw that picture had the same story to tell.
That's interesting about graduating from high school in 1983 and still having a big group of friends. Do you find that most of the people who went to high school at Palm Springs High during that time period are still living here, or are a lot of them gone? What happened to people who graduated from high school in the 80s in Palm Springs?
Wasn't that a book from a decade earlier, whatever happened to the class of '83, but
Probably.
It was the class of '69, I think. You know, still a large chunk of them do. You know, on Thursday nights, I have a booth out at Village Fest, and I do it really for just a couple of small reasons, but they all add up to a really fun time. Because I graduated here and I've lived here in the desert so long, and I've had a couple of different careers here in the desert. I was a chart house cook. I graduated high school. I'm in real estate. I worked for Marriott for nearly a decade, and I run into people out there at the Village Fest that I would otherwise never see. And I really enjoy just hearing, hey, what's going on in your life? How are your kids doing? How's your mom and dad doing? You know, those sorts of stories are fun to me. And even though, yeah, I'm selling a few books, it's really not as profitable where I can feed my family from that. But it allows me to run into old friends, and it also allows me to spend a couple of hours with my sons. 2 of my kids are now 14 and 16, and they're the perfect age to come out there and work alongside me, and it gives me a couple hours with them one-on-one.
Sure.
So we can, you know, talk about life, and I can show them how to sell.
How much is it to have a booth out there? And it's Thursday nights, is that correct? In Palm
Thursday night,
Springs?
you know, they have a couple of different rates depending on what you're selling and how you want to pay. I'm now on I pay them every 6 months, and it's about $150 a month.
Okay.
But usually it's like $50 to $80 a month unless you work your way into the reduced rate and you're willing to commit to a 6-month payment. Now that means I have to pay them $900 every 6 months at one shot. Okay, so I don't know, other people's businesses might be able to afford, you know, nearly $1,000 at one time, but if you can get yourself to there, that's the best deal.
She
Okay,
would
and
help
that's
probably,
open
so
even during the
you can call
summertime?
back and
Yes,
leave
it
a
is.
message, okay?
Okay.
Yep.
Now,
Thanks.
you said you used to work at the chart house. Is that the chart house that burned down?
Yes, it
Oh
is.
my gosh. So do you know any inside story on that since
Just
you're a
rumor.
real estate agent?
Just rumor, and it's not a nice rumor, and I probably shouldn't pass it down, but
It's just burned down. What are they doing with the property now?
well, it's John Westman's property, and the building was so unique that to rebuild it, I've heard, would be in the multi of millions, whereas in the original day, I don't know if it was 1 or 3 million, which is a lot. It's not like now 10 or 30 million, what it would be to build it at today's dollars. And the Rancho Mirage Restaurant Row is not what it was in the 70s and 80s. In the 80s, you didn't have the, until Palm Desert kind of grew to what it is now, and Palm Springs now has its own influence and strength on it. In those days, you needed an area between the two cities where people could drive to, and there was a string of restaurants, and you could have a good time through there. It's just not as necessary these days, and I think the restaurants in that area don't do the percentage of business that they did in the past.
I remember coming and visiting my grandfather in the 80s and going every night. We'd go to a different one. We'd go to Chart House. We'd go to Las Casuelas. We went to Kobe, I think, once.
Kobe's? Yeah, that was my
Kobe's.
first job.
Yeah, we went to, what's the London one that's sort of on the other side of the street? Or Fletcher's? Lord Fletcher's.
Lord Fletcher's, yes.
Yes.
I've never ate at Lord Fletcher's, but I've always heard good things about it.
I just remember they had a good steak, and my grandfather lost the button off his jacket.
Ate too much?
I don't know, but we went back to find it, and they didn't have it.
Yep.
And he had used to work at Desmond's down in Palm Springs.
I remember Desmond's well.
That place is closed now, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah, there's another clothing store there now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's what you should. I'm sure there are some other books, but it would be interesting to have you write a book on the history of the Palm Springs area too.
Well, Greg Neiman has a nice book on the history of Palm Springs, and I know Greg, and I didn't want to recreate his work. He did a lot, and I'd probably end up just using his book for a lot of my research because it's so compact and easy on that. But I'll tell you, celebrity businesses in Palm Springs are kind of unique. Like, not everybody knows that Bernard Bruno, who was a famed Hollywood photographer, had a shop right downtown Palm Springs, right where there's a, not a moccasin shop, but some sort of a footwear shop right next to Peabody's Coffee Shop. Okay, that was Bruno of Hollywood's Palm Springs office. Back when he had that. And Ava Gabor of the Gabor sisters had her own interior design studio right where South Palm Canyon and East Palm Canyon come together, right there where Lyons English Grill is. These days it's a cabinetry shop, but that's where hers was. Jolie Gabor had a jewelry shop, the other, the Gabor sisters.
Not Zsa Zsa.
Zsa Zsa did not. Zsa Zsa had a house in the Mesa neighborhood where one time during a divorce, her husband disassembled her Rolls Royce and left it for her in parts. Yeah.
That is so cruel.
I know.
Oh my gosh, what a big meanie. Well, it's been so wonderful having you on the program.
Are we at the end?
We are, I know. Time flies when you're having fun. Do you want to say your phone number or where people can buy the book, your web address again before we head out?
Google PS Celebrity Homes. If you could find the easiest way, it's something I think people can remember easy, is Google PS Celebrity Homes, and you'll find me. I'm Eric.
Okay, thank you so much. You've been listening to Blonde and Dangerous on Progressive Talk, AM 1450 KPTR. Our guest this Saturday afternoon has been author Eric Meeks. He's also a real estate agent. And I'm Katie Markin. Thanks for listening.
All right.
Yay.
Okay.
Good job.
Let's see how this worked out.